What's up, everybody? It's Chad. I'm back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. Today, I'm here with my friend Tery from the eastern part of New Mexico. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad that you're able to join me, man. You do like your kind of your own thing too, so you're not camera shy at all. So that's great. You get some people that are camera shy, and you have to kind of like coach them through it, or like get them to calm down at first. Once they get relaxed, they're usually pretty good. But you got that camera presence, so that's cool to see. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you could, let's go ahead and get into the episode right away. Introduce yourself to my listeners and everything, if you don't mind.
Alrighty. So, of course, my name's Tery Sowell. Some people call me Mr. Skunk. I manage the Budboard Dispensary in Hobbs, New Mexico. We are the second dispensary in the Budboard family. I've been in the cannabis industry for quite a while. Whenever I came to the industry, there were only two dispensaries here in Hobbs. There was Ultra Health, who, of course, were the OGs in town, and then Compassionate Distributors, which later became Oso Cannabis. I do also do live streaming. I stream 6 days a week on Twitch, and I just use that platform for cannabis education and entertainment more than anything.
Nice, man. I like you hitting that angle, and I thought about doing that for a while, so I'm glad you're doing it. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm not gonna mess with that. I was thinking of approaching it from like showing my grow and then like educating, but I was like, no, they're not gonna go for that. They're gonna knock me down so quickly. So that's cool, man. It's good that you've been in the industry for a while too. There's sometimes where I don't really get to talk to people that have remember the medical days, and the struggles and everything before even the medical laws changed before we went to adult use. So
Right.
it's cool that we got some of the more of the OGs and stuff like that, and it's good that you're working in the industry. Did you work for any of those dispensaries at that time, or you didn't get in until legalization?
No, I was actually the opening manager for the Compassionate Distributors whenever they opened up here.
Nice, man. So yeah, you've been in the industry for a while, not just, as a patient, but as someone working in the industry. So that's dope. Keeping it going and everything. Well, again, thank you for joining me. But, today we're here to talk about a couple of things. But first, I want to know, when did you get started using cannabis? That's something I've been asking a lot of people recently. And, it's just a little curious question to start things out.
So the first time I personally ever smoked cannabis, I want to say 13 years old, sitting on, the back porch at your mom's house. Dr. Pepper can for a pipe that the cousin showed you how to hook up, and a couple, pinches of who the hell knows what kind of weed. But that's when it started. Prior to that, I had injured my back, and just the immediate relief pretty much turned me into a lifer right then. Other than a few jobs here and there, I've used cannabis just about daily since I was about 13 or 14 years old.
Dang, man. So, essentially a lifetime user in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you used it more medicinally, probably more longer in your life than not,
Right.
unfortunately, due to the injury. But I'm glad that you found relief through cannabis, and not through, pharmaceuticals and, going through that whole thing. So I'm glad that, you found that and everything. Well, what got you in the industry then? You've been in the industry for a while. Was it something that you really wanted to do? Or you just kind of fell into it?
No, as soon as they launched the medical program here in New Mexico, I started looking for an avenue to get in the industry. But because I did come from a place where it was highly illegal, I grew up in that like North Mississippi, South Tennessee area.
Mm-hmm.
And go figure, it was very illegal there, still is. I think it's even more like a higher crime there than it is in Texas, which is saying something. Yeah, once the industry became an industry in New Mexico, I kind of knew I wanted to get my foot in the door somewhere. I just wanted to make sure it was with a company that I could actually rock with. Even back then, you'd hear the good, the bad, and the ugly of just about every company that's name came up. And like I said, I wanted to make sure it was a company I could actually rock with long term before I would even take the opportunity.
Yeah. And at the time we didn't have many to choose from in the first place. So and I'm from Alamogordo originally, so I totally get that. Like I was stuck in between going to Ruidoso to Compassionate Distributors or coming here to Cruces to Mother Earth Herbs, and like I had no other outlet. So at least you had an outlet and everything. I was just like, damn it, I can't work for anybody near. I think I trimmed for Compassionate Distributors like one of their seasons or something early on. That was about it.
Well, the IT guy who worked for Compassionate at the time, I think he's went and launched his own thing since then. But it was actually their IT guy, a friend of mine named Kenny, who reached out to me whenever they decided they wanted to open up a Hobbs store. I think the
Nice.
Hobbs store was like their fifth or sixth location. And at the time I was doing things before people were allowed to do things. I was still trying to help the community in whatever ways I could.
Yeah.
So his name, or rather my name, is one he was pretty familiar with.
Mhm. Nice, man. And it's cool that you're still going on. How many dispensaries over there now?
I want to say as of last month's crop reporting, we had 28 licenses in Hobbs.
Dang, them Texans come over in flocks.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have
Oh,
more dispensaries than anything else. You could add up all of our restaurants. We don't have 28 restaurants. We don't have 28 of anything.
no,
Um,
yeah.
yep. And there's some I wish they were doing better. A couple of them actually reported just under 5,000 last month. And like, sadly, I don't know how long those shops are going to be around. Those tend to be the newer, trying to come in mom and pop shops. And it kind of sucks to see it, but like the market is what the market is, unfortunately.
Yeah, and and that's the thing about it. It's great that we opened up this opportunity for people, that with the licensing the way it is. But you also run into the people that they're going to get out of the industry either quickly or down the road,
Right.
and the market does what the market does, and that's capitalism at the end of the day. I applaud anybody who tries, but at the same time, I can't feel bad for anybody who tries too. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
we're all in this, we're all fighting. I've had to start over like 5 times, in this industry kind of thing. Like it is what it is, but at least we get more opportunities with the way that it's set up here in New Mexico.
Right.
So but more luck to the people that are still trying. If you don't make it, dust yourself off and try it again. Like
Absolutely.
why else wouldn't you? That's the best thing you can do is just fail forward. And that's the beauty of it. But we'll see what happens, and that's crazy that there's that many dispensaries over there. And would you say
Yeah.
like a lot of the sales go to the Texans, especially over at at the Bud Board dispensary?
Overall, I'd say yeah. Like, and I
Yeah.
believe that's the case for most of Hobbs. A lot of the dispensaries actually try to locate themselves on in routes from Texas. That's the reason that Compassionate picked the building it did, is because if you're coming in from like the Midland or Odessa area, you have to drive past their store to get into Hobbs.
Yeah, yeah. And
Uh,
you guys are you guys are in the like Permian Basin area too as well, so you get the oil workers too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, where we put our building at here in Hobbs, we don't have that. Like, we're not on the route into town from Texas in any location. We'd be more like on the inroad from Carlsbad, New Mexico, instead. So we do get quite a bit of that oil field traffic through here. I don't know if we pick up as much of the Texas traffic as some of the other shops, just because, like I
Mhm.
said, we're not located directly on their route.
Yeah.
Now, we do take pride in being one of the highest rated shops in Hobbs. Like, if you just Google dispensary Hobbs, New Mexico, we're usually either number one or number two on the list. And it's been that
Yeah.
way for over a year now. So people coming to town, our name does come up. So I do believe we catch quite a bit of the Texas traffic, just not as much as some others.
And it's good to get an update because I actually had James on the show a couple years ago. Actually, remember Bud
Yeah.
Board we had him on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had James on a couple years ago. And, it's cool to hear the update because this is like early on when we first started essentially, and
Right.
it was real cool to hear that what you guys got going on. You guys are still going solid, especially not even being on that main artery of the Texans coming in and out.
Yeah.
You still get some of them, but you guys are still running solid. So that's saying that you guys do a great job of outreach. I do see your content online, and you guys
Yeah.
are very active. That's one thing that some of these places aren't doing too, is people don't even know some of these places are around because they're not spending any time or effort. I'm not even saying money, because some of the stuff you can do for free, like on Instagram,
Yeah.
like y'all. You got to take the time and the effort to get yourself out there, to make a funny reel that goes viral or whatever, or just something to get people into the shop, or to just
Absolutely.
make them know you're there. Like it's all about that. And branding. Branding is
Yeah.
huge, especially going into the industry that we are now. We're what, year 3. 2 more years, we should be more closer to like a mature market.
Right.
And we're starting to see signs of that, the way things are moving and like things are shifting, and like you said, unfortunately some of those places are going to shut down, but that's the way it is.
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
you're right. We're starting to see more of the pricing kind of, I don't want to say settle down, but that's the
mhm.
word that comes to mind.
Yeah.
For a while there, you couldn't buy a gram of pretty much any concentrate for less than $30-$40.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Now I see it
frankly,
like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, I was just gonna say, frankly, a lot of BHO isn't worth $40 a gram.
No, it's not. You're right. And with the I wouldn't say the re-rise of hash rosin, because like that style of hash, water hash and stuff like
Yeah,
that's been around for a long time. But like hash rosin really taking over, or solventless really taking off and taking over. We're going to see less and less of the BHO and stuff, and distillate. Some people are starting to get more aware of distillate and all that. So
yeah,
yeah, and like the price, yeah, the price is going down. Some people would say too much. We have like a little bit of oversaturation of cannabis right now.
mhm,
The CCD is supposed to lower the plant counts when that happens, but it hasn't happened yet. So I think when that does happen, we'll see the price go up just a little bit more, but I don't think we're going to see it go to anywhere near to where first year of legalization
yeah.
was or anything like that. We'll never get back there, but we will see it kind of ease back up a little bit. But right now where we're at, yeah, we're heading towards more of like that mature market pricing
Right.
that we see in other states.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I've got no problems with BHO. There's some companies out there that are killing it with their BHO.
Yeah.
Oleo, for example, makes a phenomenal live resin
Mhm.
that I personally dab it just about as often as I can. But
Yeah.
I've yet to find a BHO product worth the price point that it was at the last, especially like you said, that first year.
Yeah. Yeah. That first year you could get away with selling $3,000, $4,000 pounds.
Yep.
Now they look at you like, whoo, is it made out of gold?
Right.
It's like, holy crap. So no, yeah. And I'm with you on that. If it's a good product, it's a good product. Like I had some really good BHO. I've had some really good shatter. I've had really good distillate, but it coming from that price point of, the higher dollar amount that you're paying for like really good rosin, these days, or hash rosin, or even some live resins, it kind of doesn't compare. I
Right.
remember when diamonds first came out, what was it, like $90 a gram?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad we're kind of evolving as an industry and everything, but things always change, and we always discover something new. So right now it looks like the hash rosin's really catching on. But I found out the other day that actually cannabis drinks are catching up to pre-rolls. So they're like,
Really?
yeah, they're really catching up. And I kind of predicted that happen. I just didn't think it was going to be this quick. Um,
Okay.
yeah, because the drinks are the emerging thing. I think about 10 years they'll be the number one way that we consume cannabis. Just because people love convenience.
Yeah.
That's why the pre-roll is king. But the convenience is going to be even more convenient because there's no smell that's
Right.
associated with it whatsoever. So I think the convenience will win at the end of the day, and that's going to be the drinks.
Which drink products have you found that you enjoy?
Oh man, that's a good question. I will say I do enjoy Baked Chicken's grape soda. I do like that one, or their grape juice. It's carbonated, so it's like a soda. But they use real juice, so you can taste the juice. It's not like it's like a fake grape. I also enjoy some of Matt Tanner's stuff over at Stoned Ape. I like some of his
Mhm.
drinks. I had the collaboration he did with Monster House too. I think it was the Monster Mango. That was actually really good. His lemonades are always really on point too. And then here in town at 420 Collection at the Consumption Lounge, they make their own drinks there, and she bases it off like a Kool-Aid recipe, so it's nostalgic. It's kind of like being a kid and get some Kool-Aid. So I really enjoy that. But yeah, those are some of the ones that I've been able to really enjoy and kind of drink the most. Other of them I just didn't remember, really wasn't enjoyable. What about yourself?
The baked chicken ones, I've tried a few of them.
Mhm.
There's one or two that I like. Overall, I wasn't a fan of most of those. But I'm not sure why. Like there was nothing inherently that I could point out. Well, I didn't like this, that, or the other. It's just
Yeah,
one of those taste things. I didn't care for them.
yeah,
But yeah, they've been wildly popular. They've brought samples by a few times, and while we don't carry their product, I always make sure that if you're going to bring me samples, I'm going to hook up a bud tender, hook up a customer, something like that, something to get the word out
yeah.
about your product. And everyone that I've given them to has loved them.
Yeah.
Kind of like you said, Matt Tanner, he rarely misses on his products. He's a really great manufacturer. Or I don't know if he does his own manufacturing, but whoever produces his products, whether it's him or someone else, knocks it out of the park.
Yeah.
I'll die on the hill that the banana pudding chocolate bar from Stoned Ape is probably the best edible in the state. No one's
Oh,
been
dude,
able to,
his bars. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
with you
no,
on that.
no one's been able to prove me wrong yet, and that's been an open invite. I'm like, prove me wrong, and I'll stock your product,
Yeah.
just like that. Like, if you got a
And you know
better
what? I'm with
one,
you. Huh?
I was just saying, if you've got a better one, please show me.
No, 100% because his bars are really good.
Yeah.
The banana pudding one is my all-time favorite.
Yep.
I remember when that was in CBD form back in the days, when we were still the medical days, and he would show up at
Right.
pop-ups and stuff with the CBD stuff. And even those were really good back then. And to me, even today, it tastes the same to me.
Yep.
And I like that. It's the consistency that people love.
Yep.
And of course, his branding is fire. The t-shirts and everything. So shout out Matt. He's killing it out there over in Eastern New Mexico too. So I try to say what's up to him wherever I can, whatever. But we're opposite sides of the state, so I don't get to see him as much these days.
He recently did a collaboration with Couch Lock Concentrates to do a rosin chocolate. I have not tried them. We just stocked that product today. Literally, one of the owners came down, brought me a batch of chocolates from Tanner, and that's one of them.
Oh wow!
Like I said, haven't opened it yet, but I know it's on my agenda as soon as I get home.
Heck yeah! Well, you got to let me know how that goes and everything, man.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to more of the drinks evolving and stuff. One thing I will say is there's too much sugar in most of the drinks in the state when it comes to that, and that's one reason why I won't like certain ones. There's just too much sugar, and I get it. They're trying to hide certain flavors and stuff sometimes because the cannabis extracts is pretty strong in flavor, and it overtakes a lot of things. So I get it; it's overpowering, but I think that it's a time to experiment. Maybe use that to your benefit. You know what I mean? Like they have bitters and alcohol for a reason, because there's certain drinks that call for that. And it's not bad to have a little bit of a bitterness in a drink. It doesn't have to always be sweet. So I'm looking forward to seeing more mixed drinks essentially and people getting creative,
Like mocktails.
Yeah, mocktails. There we go. I want a Bloody Mary, like I want to, or Bloody Maria, something, or Bloody Mary Jane, Bloody Mary Jane or something, something like that, or maybe get me a Gatorade, something, for after a workout or something like that, or a sparkling water. That's another thing that's really popular with these days, or even you can do the water thing too, but I don't know how that's going to be flavor wise unless they just use like a something that doesn't really have much in it. It's been very highly processed. So we'll see what happens in the future. But I'm excited to see less sugar. And hopefully, people will get that idea that, yeah, we need less sugar, especially for people who have like diabetes and stuff like that too. They should be able to enjoy the drinks because it's kind of, Gino's over here like, what? So, yeah. Were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, so I wanted to go on to talk more about the gaming stuff too. And we sat here and talked about a lot of the industry and stuff, and it's great to get the update on Eastern New Mexico because I talk about Sunland Park a lot. I'm like right there, so I'm there a lot. And it's booming in New Mexico, but Hobbs, Carlsbad, Clovis, Eunice, Jal, all those areas are killing it too. In their own right. So thank you for that update. So I brought you on the show, and I found out you do a lot of gaming stuff too. So what are some things? How do you correlate the cannabis community and the gaming community together? And I already know that most of us are cannabis users, gamers as well. They kind of coincide together. So how do you accomplish that?
So what I did was the main thing that I did whenever I started my stream was I wanted to make sure that the games I was playing was games that I could play and still actually interact with chat. A lot of streamers, especially big streamers, they'll just let their chat roll and they'll have a couple mods in there that, kind of talk to people and gas people up. But like, I've got free chat commands where you can jump in and say, !grow tip. And I'll just think of some way to, that an average grower may not know going into a grow, or an average person may not know going into a grow. Things like that, though. So I'm very active in the chat. I talk to people. They come in, they ask questions, oftentimes about either strains that they're interested in growing or things that we may have going on at the shop.
Yeah.
And I usually play games like Fall Guys, games that tend to have a like a high comedic value
Hmm.
because shit, I'm not the best at them, and it's kind of funny to watch me get frustrated at times. I'll leave property because I do stream from my shop,
Hmm.
but I'll leave property, go on a break, come back medicated after my shift ends, and that's when I'll come back here and stream. So it's usually good for a few laughs, and most people get to learn a little bit too.
Yeah, that's great that you're really implementing the educational part with it too. I like the exclamational grow tips,
Mhm.
kind of thing. Like that's great. If you guys don't know, if you've never watched a stream or been a part of a stream, that you can program it to do all kinds of things. My friend
Mhm.
Anna, she has one where you do exclamation PP and it gives you like a random inch of how big your PP is. And it's like a funny thing. So, yeah, I got a bunch of people in there, doesn't matter guy or girl. And, you got dudes like, oh, I got 2 inches. Like everyone's like, ha ha, so funny thing. So you can do stuff like that. But he did it in an educational sense and not just a childish, grotesque way. I like the fact that, you went the educational route and you're like, let's teach people some stuff because
Yeah.
like certain people don't know that plants can't tell the difference between organic nutrients and salts. Like they
Right.
can't tell the difference. Of course, there's difference of how they uptake it, or the time that it takes to uptake it, kind of how, but
Right.
there's really they don't know. So telling people something like that might just blow their mind because they never
Yep.
heard about it, but it and it's something that you've been doing. And keeping people up to date on the shop. I stumbled upon your Twitch, and I did watch one of the episodes from a couple days ago. You're playing Fall Guys. I play Fall Guys myself. It's a fun game. It's a
Yeah.
hilarious game. There's only like a couple buttons you can actually use in it, so it kind of gives you that nostalgic feeling of having the A and the B only.
Yeah.
And so it was cool to just watch that. And then you updated people on what's going on with there. You even gave some updates about the green chili stuff here in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And so as someone who's I guess would be considered a transplant, it was funny to hear you talk about that. I was like, yeah, one thing that you guys might think is weird is we put green chili on everything here. And I like how you said we, because that means you do it too now.
Damn right. Shit, man,
So,
we finally got a Blake's in Hobbs, and I had to wait for the crowds to die down because for the first few weeks there were lines around the block, people trying to get in there. But the second the line died down, I had to go get me a sausage burrito with green chili, like mandatory.
oh, those are so good. Yeah, you're right.
Mandatory.
Oh man, do you guys have Allsups in
Yeah.
Hobbs, right? Okay, so Cruces, we just got one. We have two now, and so like people are kind of like just discovering it down here. And Alamogordo, we had them in like every corner, and Gino's
Right.
over here, telling me it's gross. I love Allsups burritos. I can't live without them essentially. And every time I take a friend there, they usually end up liking it too. But
Yeah.
it's funny watching people get used to like the Allsups here, and then we have the other people are like, these aren't Allsups because they're really nice. The ones that we have, they're not the crackhead Allsups we're used to. But it's some people are like, these aren't the real Allsups. Supposed to be a crackhead in the front, an employee smoking a cigarette who's mad at you.
Right. Like he's pissed off because he had to put a cigarette out. The crackhead's happy because he gets that guy's half a cigarette.
It's a whole ecosystem.
Absolutely. All because Tery wanted a burrito at 2 a.m. again.
Right, exactly. I don't think people have really got to discover that until recently here in Cruces. So it's kind of funny, and we'll see it as it evolves more. But I don't know. Like most of these are like on the outskirts of town. They're not like right in dead center. So we'll see. But yeah, well, I digress. We'll talk more about the video games again because we could talk about food all day.
All day.
What's his handle?
Oh yeah. What's your handle on Twitch? I don't think you shared that. Gino's wanting to follow you right now. Actually,
my handle on Twitch is Scunk Gaming, SCUNK Gaming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
You can find me. There's a Skunk Gaming page on pretty much every platform. There's also a Mr. Skunk on Instagram and TikTok.
Got it. Yeah, got to be everywhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, also, I think, did you work with a dispensary recently in Sunland Park to do a tournament, or is that someone else I'm mixing it up with?
No, I did talk with them.
Okay.
Monster House, whenever we was at the SCs, we chopped it up a little bit. I believe Gator is the gentleman's name.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit. I just wasn't able to coordinate getting down there to it. But yeah, I was gonna join in and potentially sponsor it. Things just ended up not working out that way.
It
It
happens, man.
looks like they had a blast. I wish I could have taken part in it, but no, I can't take any credit for that when they kicked that ass without me.
Nice. And I'm starting to see them kind of show up, in random places. A place in town does it sometimes. Monster House is here in town, so that's probably the one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And then another dispensary does it, and then another one in Sunland Park recently did it too. Of down there, yeah, they're going to be the first one that has a consumption lounge, but they're just they're dealing with the whole bureaucratic system of the whole cities and stuff like that. You know how that goes. But they had the first tournament. That's cool, and I'm hoping to see it more because cannabis and video games has a long history together. Pretty much essentially since video games were invented, you had the brave cannabis users from like the 50s and 60s who were playing the video games and stuff. And of course, into the 70s, 80s, and 90s until current times, of course, and probably not going to change. So, it's cool that, you're combining the two because a lot of the times, especially being an adult, people are like, oh, that's for kids. That's for kids. And like, but why does this say mature only or, whatever the fuck, like this is meant for adults.
Right. Like, have you played Assassin's Creed, for example? That is like, I'm not going to judge anyone that lets their kids play it. I'm just saying Ubisoft probably didn't intend for you to let your children running around stabbing shit. That's probably not why they put an M rating on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Or GTA. I know all of us are excited for GTA 6 coming out next year. I know it's supposed to be this year, but it's coming out next year now. And I know all of us are excited, but we know that's not going to be child friendly whatsoever. That's like Leisure Suit Larry meets reality kind of thing.
You're the first person I've heard of that's ever referenced Leisure Suit Larry, man. That is some like old school cringe Xbox.
Oh, dude, yeah, super cringe. I played it one time, just curious, and I was like, oh my god. Yeah. So yeah, I get it. That was an interesting game, and I was like, all right, I didn't know what I was getting into, but I know now. Shit,
right?
I played it.
Yeah. Gino's played it. I think a few of us have played it. It's an OG kind of game, dude. Like
right.
Very niche.
But if you ever beat the game, at the end of it, you're sitting there like, okay, what the hell did I just do to myself for the past few hours? Like, I feel like I need a shower.
Yeah. It is, and like for some reason little mini games like keep you there. It's stuck. You're like, I want to beat this. It's not the fact that you're trying to be a perv. I just want to beat this. It shouldn't be this hard. This is a stupid game.
Yeah, like I'm a gamer. I bought a game. I want to beat the game.
Yeah, or the Power Rapper one back in the day. That was one of my favorites too. The Power Rapper, Papa Rapper, whatever. Power Rapper. I can't say
Parappa the Rapper.
Parappa the Rapper. There we go. Yeah, that's an OG one too. That was funny. Some of y'all watching probably like, what the hell game is that? It was this video game where you'd use the controllers, and this was on PlayStation back in the day. And it was you would hit a certain button for a lyric, and you would try to complete the whole song in the series of like the different controls, and it got really freaking hard. It was really fun. I don't know why it never materialized after that, but maybe Tony Hawk.
It kind of did. It just became its own genre of game, and then they added a plastic guitar.
You're right. Now that you mentioned that, you're right. Guitar Hero pretty much took it over, and that's pretty much early days Guitar Hero.
It went from Parappa the Rapper. They made a sequel to that one that had the little the female character as the lead.
Yes.
And it was just called Parappa 2. Then a game called Amplitude came out, and in Amplitude you were basically a pilot of this little spaceship. But it was the exact same way. Like there were 4 notes that positioned above you, and depending on which buttons you hit, you would move and shoot those notes. And then that evolved into like your Guitar Heroes and into Rock Band.
Yeah. And then now Fortnite, has pretty much bought the rights for some of that stuff, and you can do that in Fortnite. I play Fortnite, of course. So sometimes I'll play with that. I use a controller. It's stupid. I'm sitting here like the controller, just playing like this. I'm like, this is dumb. I wish I had the guitar.
I've never played their what do they call it? Arena mode, stadium mode, the Rock Band version. I've never played that.
Oh yeah,
one.
Really?
I have played Fortnite. I'm not the biggest Fortnite gamer. I think I'm a little too old, and I can only play no build.
Okay. Yeah,
the first time I got on it, I dropped in and I'm like, okay, no weapons to start. This is kind of cool. Got to, find something right quick. And I found a sniper rifle. Apparently it was nothing special, but I come from like Modern Warfare 3 kind of thing. I picked up a sniper rifle. Someone was maybe 20 meters from me. I headshotted him. Next thing I know, this jackass built the Taj Mahal and he's halfway across the map. And now I'm dead.
Yeah.
I'm like, this might not be the game for me because I don't know what the fuck just happened.
Yeah.
Sorry for the F-bomb.
Oh no, it's free to go on this one. No worries.
All right, cool.
But yeah, Fortnite, it was like I actually stopped playing it after a while because I started playing in like 2017 with the homies, and then people just got too damn good at building, and I was just like, nah, this is not as fun as it used to be, man. I gotta give myself arthritis anytime I get in one fight, just to try to build or something. And next thing I know, this
Right.
kid's built a freaking Taj Mahal, within under 2 seconds. You're like, what just happened? So when they brought no build back or no build up, I was like, oh, this is sick, and I love no build.
Yeah.
So I got away from Call of Duty. I've been playing that since of course Call of Duty 1, back when they're doing
Right.
World War 1 and World War 2 video games. I actually found my Modern Warfare 360 disc yesterday. I
Nice.
was like, oh my god, I still have this. This thing's a relic.
Right, it's classic.
No, it is. I'm like, it's gonna be worth money one day. It's the OG. So, but yeah, I don't know. I fell out of love with it. I used to love playing Warzone. Crossbow was my favorite. I was a crossbow guy. But I don't know. Somewhere, I think it's when they added the where they could talk to you, other people in the map just randomly. I forgot what it was.
Yeah.
Proximity chat. Once they added that, I was like, I think I'm good, man.
Proximity chat kind of messed it up for me too, man. Like I said, I was Modern Warfare 2, like Black Ops 2. That was like the highlight of Call of Duty for me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I agree with you. And then after that, it kind of, they start what?
No OG Halo?
Oh, of course, Halo. You don't
Halo,
have to
yeah.
mention it. Of course, we know. That's like you don't mention it because it's implied.
Okay.
We all know OG Halo.
Even the last two Xboxes I've owned, I've downloaded Halo 3 again just because I've got it, on my account. I don't think I've played it the last two Xboxes, but it's still like it's almost a requirement that you install it because that's an Xbox and you should have Halo.
I have Halo myself right now. You're right. Let me see if I can fix this focus real quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Halo, but it's not at the same time. You know what I mean? It's not the same Halo. We've come a long way from, LAN parties and, being at your friend's house and stuff like that. Yeah. Those of you watching, I'll explain what LAN parties are in a little bit. But, we've come a long way, and I think that's the difference is we've lost that in-person shit talking, the in-person kind of gaming rivalry thing on a little 20-inch screen, box TV kind of thing. We've lost that, and now it's just different. Of course, the game evolves. Every game has to evolve. Everything has to evolve. But it's just not what it used to be. And I'll explain to you guys what LAN parties are. What it is you essentially just connected all your consoles together via a
Cable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Through the cables. And then you connected it that way, and then you just online game essentially in person with each other. Now, some people would get fancy. Like if you lived in an apartment, you would just run a long one to your buddy's house or his apartment, whatever. Gino's raising his hand. I know in the barracks they would do that. Of course, in the dorms too. I heard about that as well in college. So, but yeah, that was LAN parties, and it was essentially online gaming, but in person.
Somebody would bring a little switch that looked like it had 5 or 6 ports on it.
Yep.
Usually one of the homies had that. Then everybody would come by with their TV and their Xbox. You'd find a spot to set them all up. Everybody would plug into that, and it basically created like a little private internet that just you guys were connected to.
Yeah. You'd have like 4 dudes on one screen, and it would get ridiculous.
Cussing each other out for screen watching. Keep your eyes on yourself, fucker.
Screen watching, bitch. Oh, and don't get me started on the Call of Duty lobbies. Oh my God. You want to talk about toxic. Oh, the Halo lobbies weren't as bad. The Call of Duty ones, those were bad. Like if those were around these days, everybody would be freaking canceled.
It's crazy just how many people that you would game with. You'd never understand how, but somehow every person on Xbox that you were better than had sex with your mom. Somehow. Inexplicably, this was always the case.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how this stranger knows my mom, but it's he had sex with her somehow. What the fuck?
Right? He's like the 7th one today. Like my mom's at work. She's a busy woman.
It's like, dang, mom, I had no clue this was going on. This is like the 10th dude today. Yeah, of course there's like memes and stuff over that stuff. So yeah. But and of course cannabis is usually involved while we're doing all of these things at the same time too, and like we're not really unlike with you on Twitch, we're not educating other people about it, but we're smoking, we're enjoying it. I mean, I do that today. I did that
Right.
yesterday probably. Smoked in game with some friends or something. Like it's just a part of it. And like, will it make me a better gamer? I don't know. I probably don't really care, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun that way. Like I prefer being stoned versus being drunk in gaming. Like I tried, playing. I tried playing one of the video games drunk, and I can't think of the name right now. Gears of War, and I tried active reloading. Drunk was impossible when I was younger. Yeah, stoned I can get it every time, but drunk that was impossible. There's like a little meter that you have to catch at the right time to reload quickly. And yeah, being drunk that's impossible. But yeah, like I really like the fact that you're doing that. Do you have anything else planned for like this cannabis and gaming kind of thing?
Absolutely. So what I'm doing, I'm actually stocking up a little bit, as it were. So I've got two more Xboxes. I've got two projectors. I've got 200-inch screens, things like that. And now I'm just kind of building out my case to where I can be the guy that goes to these consumption lounges, these dispensaries, and hosts these gaming tournaments. Fighting games in particular are kind of like my forte when it comes to tournaments.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've thought about doing one here at Budboard to start, and of course that's most likely where we will do the first one.
Fair enough.
But since it's not a consumption lounge here, that makes it a little less enjoyable overall for the participants.
Yeah.
We're talking with a local consumption lounge here to see if maybe we can partner up and do it at their place, though.
That's the best way to do it, man. It's better together, right? That's what we
Absolutely,
always say. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's better to work together than to fight with each other like all day.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm glad you're doing it that route, and that's great. You get to collab, with the consumption lounge, give them the option to use cannabis in game at the same time.
Yeah.
Because sometimes players swear by it that they have to be stoned to be in a tournament or whatever. And of course, we have that one dude that was on mushrooms. He won like that. I forget what tournament he won, but he won a tournament when he was high as fuck on mushrooms. And he was, I don't even think he realized that he was that going to be that high, because I think he took a chocolate or something.
That's awesome.
Right. It was pretty funny. I saw the interview afterwards, and I was like, "Oh my god, that guy is on mushrooms." So, congratulations on all that, man. The build out and everything. I'm looking forward to seeing it around the state more. With like what you're doing and everything, and maybe who knows, it might expand to even further. Maybe the tournaments will get bigger. We'll just see these tournaments move around the state at different consumption lounges, or
Right.
different private whatever. I'm really hopeful for it. That's cool. I'm from the gaming community as well too. So, it's cool to see that, gaming and cannabis, are coinciding still, and, just being kind of embraced. And the fact that you're taking initiative to educate people while gaming at the same time and entertaining them, man, I thank you for that, because people need to know that THC alone is just, a sales gimmick.
Right. Absolutely. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things about the industry currently, is how many people were taught that THC is the thing that they need to look for, and trying to teach people like, hey, I know this is what you've known your whole life, but it's not quite accurate.
Yeah.
And just that it's a conversation that some consumers just aren't ready to have yet, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
that's why I do things. So like the tournaments is what I've got going on the gaming side. On the education side, I've written a couple more guides, kind of like the one that I sent you a while back to get your thoughts on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I do release those from time to time. I'm actually in the process of finishing up my first book. It's just going to be KDP, I've released on Amazon, but it's called How Not to Grow Weed. And it's just kind of a guide for how to avoid all the mistakes that I made my first few grows.
Heck yeah. And to be honest, that's important. If I would have known mistakes not to do or certain things not to do, I probably would have not messed up as much, because my first harvest, I got 1 gram.
Yeah, I believe
My
it.
first harvest ever, So, like, yeah. But, after that, yeah, you learn. But, having material like that helps, because like it would be better if I would have known, hey, I don't know, don't put it under this light because it wasn't going to work. Me being a dumbass thinking that any light worked. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you need this light,
Kind of like me, man. The first time I actually tried to grow, I was trying to grow with CFL lights, the little twisty lights. Yeah, and in my mind, as long as I got enough lumens, I'm set. So like I went to Home Depot, and you know the vanity light bars, the ones you hang above the mirror that has the 3 things on it.
Yeah.
So I bought one of those, stripped the metal off of it, got to the wiring to where I could just rig it to a timer. They sell these little Y adapters that you can screw into a light bulb socket, and now the socket holds 2 light bulbs.
Yeah.
So basically, I built this 6 CFL rig in about this much space, and I really thought that hanging that in the closet was going to be adequate lighting.
Yeah.
All I did was cook every plant that I put in there because the temperature was absurd, and the light was still nowhere near what it needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I hijacked one of my dad's shop lights. He wasn't working, and I turned it to a grow light, and it worked fine during veg. But when it came to flower, nope, nope, that was not the answer. So yeah, I totally get it, man. You know, it's a struggle, and thank you for for extending that education and stuff like that. You know, like it's going to take a bunch of us to educate everybody. You know, it's like I say, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to re-educate the cannabis industry, because we have to admit that we were wrong too.
Right.
When we were talking about this stuff. And I think that's one thing that I fail to do sometimes too when I'm teaching somebody, is to let them know that I was a believer of this too, but we found out that it was wrong. And so maybe that's the approach that we need to start, having with people, is just letting them know right up front, I'm a dumbass too, and I didn't know this. So let me teach you guys the right way. I'll take blame for it.
And for me, that revelation actually happened completely accidental. Whenever I was with compassionate distributors, I still thought THC was damn near all that mattered. Like if it smells good, high THC, done.
Yeah.
They brought out a strain called Dirty Little Secret. The stuff was so purple, it was almost black. It only tested at about 13%, but the nose on it was phenomenal. And I'm like, okay, I have to try this. At the time, me and one of the bud tenders who worked there, like we were both broke, just getting into the industry. We had a thing where if I drove us to work today, you were buying a gram for the ride home, or vice versa. So it was my turn to buy. That's the gram I bought. We rolled up a blunt. We had to put it out about halfway, or we probably wouldn't have made it home. And like I said, it only tested 13-14%. And that day I was like, well, apparently that number doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, it doesn't mean dick. There's more going on in that plant than just THC. And I'm glad that we're slowly kind of coming around. And, some of us earlier than others. But, I'm glad that you're at least taking that experience and saying, no, it's not. I know what they're trying to say, but it's not. Like the other day I was at a consumption lounge, and I was looking at the menu, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try something. I was like, I'm going to go with the lower THC ones. Sometimes they're better with the flavor. I don't know what these other ones are. I got one that was 17%, and the other one was like 19%. Fire. Both of them tasted great. It was really enjoyable. I was like, man, I'm saving money right now and enjoying this more. And I couldn't smoke the rest of this bong. Like before I left, I almost left a full bowl in the bong, and I was like, oh shit, let me finish half of this before I go, and gave the rest of the guy next to me. I was like, shit, I was that high. So, but thank you so much for joining me on this, man. I wish you nothing but luck on the whole gaming thing and everything going on. That sounds like something fun. If you're ever in the Cruces area, let me know. I'd love to attend one of those and check it out and everything. And if it's my forte game, maybe I'll join and play. Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
Get my ass kicked by some 21-year-old or something like that. But yeah, thank you. And we'll move on to the next couple topics that we got for the rest of the episode and everything. And we spent most of the time talking about this other stuff. So thank you so much. But yeah, let's jump right into it, and we're gonna talk about the federal government, what's going on with this stuff. I know I've been updating all y'all probably the past couple years on this stuff going on, but this one kind of is going to mesh a couple things in. I know we've been dealing with the Border Patrol issue since ever, but last year it got worse, or I got really bad, and this year it's kind of got a little bit worse, especially with the confiscating of cannabis and stuff. I know you guys don't deal with that, thank God.
We do.
But oh, you do?
Yeah, like a lot of our vendors have to come down through Las Cruces like that.
Okay, yeah.
Headspace, for example, like they have had hell getting to us lately, because a lot of vendors come, or rather have to come through Border Patrol to get to us. So while we don't have to drive through it, it definitely impacts us here in Hobbs as well, and not just us, the community here.
100%, and it makes things more expensive too, especially when things get confiscated. Yeah, I just meant like personally with the area where you're at, you don't have to worry about the border check.
Oh, no,
yeah, you guys are affected by it. Everybody's affected by it in the state. You know, it's not just, you know, Sunland Park, Las Cruces that's really affected by it. It's everybody. You know, and a lot of people are losing money on this, and that's unfortunate. And that's one of the things I was going to talk about with this is, you know, there was, you know, 8 different cannabis businesses that had sued the federal government. And now they're trying to get them to not dismiss the lawsuit because they're trying to dismiss it. And so they're trying to get them to not dismiss it. And it's a good try. And the way that they're going to go about this is they're trying to go on a due process kind of thing, saying that they didn't get the due process, this and that. And also, it's a kind of like California and Arizona. You know, they have cannabis, you know, legal there too, but nothing's happening to them from the border patrol. They're inland border checks because
Right.
California and Arizona have inland border checks too. But this isn't happening to them. It's just happening to New Mexico. So why are we being singled out? You know,
Right.
it's kind of like calling bullshit on them. They're saying we're just enforcing the federal law. It's like, well, that's bullshit because if that was the case, these 2 other states would be complaining as well too. But it's just us. So
Yeah, it'd be
why are we
enforced
just
across
getting
the
targeted?
board.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, if that was the case, that would be what was happening. And, you know, from what I was reading, you know, pretty much every turn that we get, the federal government saying, well, they have the authority. They have the authority. They have the authority. They have the authority, no matter what we throw at them in this lawsuit. But it makes it harder because it's Schedule 1, you know, substance.
Yeah.
So they have little wiggle room. But I think what the real tactic for this is to keep it going until it gets to Supreme Court.
Right.
If they dismiss this now, it misses that chance, and you know that could take years, of course. But I think it's important that it does try to make it to the Supreme Court. And some people have said, "Oh, you know, they're trying this for whatever. It's a stupid try." You know, to be honest, as stupid as it may be, it's worth a shot.
Absolutely.
You know how many stupid like shots I've made just being a dumbass, like playing basketball with my friends, just making it, and you make it.
Yep.
Sometimes that happens, you know, and that could be this lawsuit. You know, like as dumb as some of you may think it is, I'm still hopeful for something in the future. You know, and tagging along with that is, you know, we have some bills that were introduced into Congress a couple of weeks ago for legalization, of course, getting the government prepared for legalization as such, and they're bipartisan, which is good. You know, like very rarely is anything bipartisan these days. So seeing that is a good sign because, you know, we have like, I think I saw a statistic the other day. I think it was like 1 in 5, 1 in 5, or like 5 in 10, whatever Americans live next to a dispensary in America.
Mhm.
Like it's like a crazy amount. Like, and I was like, that's interesting. Yeah, don't quote me on that. I just can't remember off the top of my head. I just remember it was surprising to see that. I was like, wow, it's like majority of Americans live near a dispensary. So you know, we have that changing, and so we need the federal laws to kind of catch up. And unfortunately, they haven't
Absolutely.
yet. Yeah. So you know, what are your thoughts on that so far?
So sadly, I didn't see a whole lot of I didn't see a whole lot of momentum towards anything as far as like rescheduling or any sort of cannabis reform at the federal level during Trump's first administration. And so far, unfortunately, I feel the prospects are pretty bleak this administration as well,
Yeah.
with some of the people that he has picked overall. I don't know that we're going to see any steps backwards, but I don't think we're going to see any steps forward under the current administration, sadly. And I would love it if you prove me wrong.
Oh, me too. You know, and I've had the same kind of stance because for me it's confusing because you have some people in his administration that say, "Well, I want to tackle the issue." Then you have other people who are in a higher position than that saying, "Hell no, never."
Yeah.
So for me, it's in this weird limbo area because I know some people are just very, you know, very positive about it. Like, yeah, you know, it's going to happen. But like every time I look into it and something happens or someone in his administration is asked about it and they give like a really weird answer about it, I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't going to happen this next
Yeah.
4 years. You know, we're going to be stagnant unless something huge changes. We're going to be stagnant, and that would be
Mhm.
something through Congress. You know, we
Right.
need Congress to step in. I've heard the revitalization of, you know, the rescheduling efforts coming through with one of his other picks, but that's not for sure.
Right.
You know, like that's a process that we knew was going to take a long time. It's now been paused, and we don't know when it's going to restart. So even if that is the case, we're probably not going to see anything for a couple of years. You know, if not the next administration that takes over.
Right.
And I'm not very hopeful of it at all, unfortunately.
Right.
just for the fact that the people that are in there, a lot of them are very anti-cannabis, and they're very open about being very anti-cannabis. But you also have like another, I didn't even know this is a thing. There was another bill introduced where a certain part of the government could give their opinion on cannabis, because I guess right now they can't. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that was the case. And so
Right.
if that's the case, they can kind of support, because they're not allowed to support cannabis due to the law, or, say that they support it. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any
Interesting.
sense. Yeah. And so I was like, what? So what we really need is just Congress to step in and to say, yeah, we're going to stop this foolery right now. Because even Mississippi was another state that sued the government, and they asked the Supreme Court to rule on their case, and their case had to deal with advertisement. So I guess
Mhm.
in Mississippi, there's a ban on medical cannabis being advertised
Mhm.
there, and you can't do it at all. And they were trying to attack the state's law through a First Amendment kind of clause thing, saying, well, this goes against the First Amendment. Well, the Supreme Court didn't even want to take it. So they just said,
Hmm.
nope, they punted on it, and they're going to deal with it that way. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. We can't really solely rely on the Supreme Court, because rulings like that, and
Right.
then, or not even rulings, but things like that, because they didn't even want to hear it. But then you have other courts, lower courts, making other rulings that are for cannabis. You have the certain states where the courts are ruling that if you have a gun and cannabis or medical cannabis, you shouldn't have any issues there. And then we're waiting for those to go up to Supreme Court, but you have also Supreme Court making rulings that, like, we're not hearing things like that, and making rulings against cannabis too. So we're just like, this confusion needs to stop. And I think a few times, a lot of them, I mean, judges have acknowledged that, yeah, the government needs to go in and actually change these laws. There's
Right.
nothing I can do because the law says this, and this is just what I'm ruling on based off of that. If they change it, that'd be better, because
Mhm.
yes, this is confusing.
Very.
We have this hemp industry, we have this state legal industry, and then within that we have a state medical cannabis industry. And then they want to do this Schedule 3 industry, and I'm like, holy shit, how many different industries for the same plant are we going to do?
Right. I do believe that most people, given the opportunity, would want to follow the rules and do it correctly if they knew what the hell the rules were.
Yeah,
If they knew how to do it correctly, I think we'd see a lot more people doing it correctly.
yeah, I do too. And unfortunately, even the CCD tells us they're not allowed to give us like advice or consulting.
Right.
They're only allowed to tell us what the law is. So we can't say, well, if I do it this way, does it work? They're not allowed to go, oh, well, you have to do it this way or this way. And
Right.
that's unfortunate. That they should be the ones to tell us that, because they're the controlling government entity. But I get
Mhm.
it, lawsuits, all that good stuff.
Right.
Liability. Of course, people ruin things all the time. But it's unfortunate that we can't rely on our government for that, is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be that we have to go and pay a consultant a crazy amount of fees for their opinions, because a lot of consultants, they're just giving you their opinions on the matter.
Mhm.
That may be based off of fact, it may not be. It's still their opinion, because it's their experience and what they've gone through. Are
Right.
they a good consultant? I don't know. There's really no way to tell. But if the state government is the one who implements this, with the ones that were to tell us, it'd probably be a little more accurate, and more people would follow the law.
Yeah.
Because yeah, people do want to follow the law. That's the reason why they got into this industry, was to no longer break the law. I had somebody tell me yesterday, so you know what, the streets don't like me anymore, and you know what, I'm okay with that.
Right.
Like the people from the streets, they don't talk good about me anymore, and like they don't fuck with me. But you know what, I don't give a shit. I'm on the legal side. I'm not looking over my back anymore. I don't have the government on my mind thinking that they're going to come take my shit. I'm legal now.
Yeah.
Like this is a great feeling. And hearing that is great too, because yeah, that's the way it should be. This should be a regular business.
And just like any other business, there's goods and there's bads. There's going to be risk involved with any business move, whether in this
Yeah.
industry or any other. And I'm glad that so many people have taken that leap, because it is a leap to get into it.
Oh, it is, dude. It's a huge leap.
Absolutely. Just getting to see the new producers that are coming through, some of the new products coming through, things like that. And like you said earlier, just really getting to watch the market mature it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And it's like watching your baby grow up. Like,
Right.
because you've been in the industry long enough to see it grow too. Like I became a patient in 2013. That's when my advocacy started too, and going to Santa Fe, all that good stuff. So I've seen it go from one of the most strict medical cannabis programs in the nation, to one of the most lucrative and most open markets in the whole nation.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's interesting what we've done here. And to be honest, we've kind of gone against the grain on a lot of things that other states have done, but we've also shown them that there's not one way to cut this cake, and
Right.
there's enough cake for everybody. You know what I mean? As long as we allow everybody to have a piece of that cake or be accessible to that cake. That cake needs to be accessible.
Absolutely.
And I think we've done that, especially with the way we've done licensing. Some people want to raise licensing a lot, but then that becomes a rich man's game. And,
Yep.
we're not a rich state, dude.
Right.
Like I'm sure you and I both know that, we're not very rich here. So like there makes no sense to have a policy like that. And just, I guess we'll just see what happens, going on with all this stuff. Cause like dealing with the federal government's frustrating. Because dealing with the state government's frustrating already because of all the overregulation that we have.
Oh, even
And I
the
think that's
city government.
Oh God, the city government sometimes is the worst out of all of them.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how much power your local jurisdictions have versus like a state and federal government.
Check this out for the Hobbs Bud Board location. Now, whenever we opened up, there was another dispensary right across the road from us.
Mhm.
I won't call their name out. They're no longer open here in Hobbs. They do have a few other locations, but they're under enough scrutiny without me trying to throw sand at them. But across the road from us, now keep in mind, it was a dirt road between us and them. They have a dirt parking lot. None of that I've got any objections to. But the city of Hobbs made us pave our parking lot. That they made us pave the parking lot, make it ADA compliant, which, hey, I'm all for that. It's a little confusing why the place across the road didn't have to, but I digress. But they made us pave the road.
Really?
Yeah, it's almost, I'd say 75, 80 yards worth of road that we had to pave.
That's not cheap.
No, just over, I want to say $250,000 is what it ended up costing us between the road and the parking lot. And that's in addition to what we already had in the building.
Yeah. Good Lord. Did you get a tax deduction on that?
Nothing cannabis is tax deductible, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah, that was a joke. But yeah, if y'all didn't know that, yeah, nothing in cannabis is tax deductible. That's why I made that joke.
That's
but
one
yeah,
of the things I wish we had been able to do federally is at least address the tax issues and the banking issues. That would have been just shy of miraculous to get the banking issues solved, if nothing else.
And I will say this, Trump has been supportive on those issues, particularly
Right.
on the banking and, the tax stuff. He has been very supportive on those two things. I do want to say that. However, the actions behind it have been minimal to none at all.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens going on in the future. But if something gets to his desk with that, he more than likely will sign it. I don't see him opposing something like that. So I think there might be something in Congress going through too. Don't quote me on that because I haven't looked lately. But I do think there's something tax wise and banking wise going through. I think they try every year for certain ones. So yeah, I think that's going through. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Like times. Yeah. Fingers crossed. Like I don't care who signs it. It just needs to happen. So. But yeah, that's really all I had for the federal stuff. I really want to talk about that because like it's getting ridiculous because you even have states like Alabama, they just banned Delta 8 and all that stuff, even THCA, all hemp derived stuff, and I think it's like can only be in a drink or something like that. And I think Texas wants to go that route too. So it's just causing more confusion and all this bans and the border patrol and then the lawsuits and then one agency enforcing laws in one place and not the other, and then even going down to really small stuff to the city making you guys pave a damn road.
Right.
Like that's a little ridiculous. So hopefully things change on that front. Just wanted to update you guys on that, let you know there's a lot going on federally. It's just nothing that's gonna change things really yet.
Right.
Like for the good anyway. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated on the Border Patrol thing. That lawsuit or the 8 businesses asking the courts to not dismiss the lawsuit. That's fairly new because they pretty much did just try to dismiss it. And that was kind of going to be the deciding factor on it. But I hope they don't. I hope it keeps going. And we'll see what happens. But we'll go to the very last topic of the episode for the show this week, and then we'll call it a day. So do you have anything before we move on this topic right now?
No, not on the federal, man. I think we've about covered it.
Yeah, we covered everything. I kicked that horse, right? So the last one I talk about is Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania normally is not a state that I talk about a lot, but they are looking to legalize cannabis, and it's kind of impressive the way that they've done it. 24 hours ago, they introduced or I think 48 hours ago. So 24 hours after this bill was introduced, it passed its committee, and now it's headed to the House floor. So that's very impressive in any legislature to happen. However, I don't know if this is a bill that I would back personally anywhere, because it is a state stores model. And what that means is that the state owns and runs the stores. All the employees are state employees. All the weed is state weed, et cetera, et cetera. So the state will be essentially selling you the weed, and there will be no other competition other than the state. And I guess they do this with their alcohol and liquor. They have a liquor control board, and that's who you buy your cannabis or your alcohol from, is the state. And I think they just want to copy paste this for that. And keep in mind, no state has done this model yet. Some have flirted with it, even here in New Mexico. Around 2018, 19, we flirted with the same idea, except ours is even worse. Ours, it was going to be, you couldn't have another dispensary within 20-mile radius of a state store. And I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's a little crazy. So that bill obviously didn't pass. We went something that works better. And it's, the open market, because this is kind of anti-capitalist, to be honest. This isn't really capitalism or a free market whatsoever. This doesn't allow anybody to participate, is what it sounds like to me, other than the government. And that's not really fair. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that is a business for all of us, not just the government. So, like, what are your thoughts on Pennsylvania going this route?
So Pennsylvania going the route of the state stores is something that I would almost rather they not pass it than pass it in that way. And it's because, like you said, it's the exact opposite of everything that America's markets are supposed to be. We're supposed to be an open market. We're supposed to be a free market, and that definitely goes. I know it's kind of a trigger word for some people these days, but whenever you're talking about government-run stores of any kind, to me that just gives off communist vibes.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to use it like, a trigger word, not trying to get, overly political with it. But I mean,
Kind of to the definition.
Right.
Yeah.
Whenever you do that, you're not making any room for people in your state to profit off of something that you're going to profit off of. And that, like I said, it's almost better to just keep it at a black market than do that, as far as for the consumer.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you with that. I fought against that bill personally. There's a couple people that supported it, but I wasn't a fan of it. And to be honest, I don't think anybody in Pennsylvania should. I did see some online chatter from some people from Pennsylvania. They do not like the way that they control liquor now. And so they don't want it to be the same with cannabis. And so that's great that there's people voicing opposition, but I don't know if it's being heard well enough, because this bill looks like it's going through the legislature fairly quickly. They're saying within the next day or two, it could see itself on the House floor. And then after that, of course, we know it goes to the Senate, where I have a feeling it's only going to have one committee. Because what I try to tell people is you want to hope that your bill that you're putting through the legislature has 2 committees or less. Because if it has more than that, it's a death by committee. And now it can make it out of, don't get me wrong, it can, but your chances decrease significantly of it getting out of those committees.
Absolutely. Much more likely to just stall in one of them.
Yeah, stall or die, whatever. And that's why sometimes you'll see these bills go in both chambers. They'll introduce the same bill in both chambers because it has a better chance of passing that way. And then at some point, if something happens, they can merge them and whatever, and then it gets an even murkier of a process. But that's the reason why they do that. Happens all the time in the legislatures. But this right here, I just don't think it's good legislation whatsoever. I get it. They're just trying to make it easier to regulate this, but we're finding out that cannabis cannot be regulated like alcohol because they're not the same. Because when you do that, you end up doing the opposite of what you think you're doing. And just creating more chaos, like all this overregulation that we have right now here, even here in New Mexico. We're heavily overregulated. It needs to pull back a little bit because some of the stuff is just ridiculous. And to be honest, it's only there to just make people feel better, and it doesn't really fix anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we had something that would fix it, that would be something different. And that's kind of what I feel that's happening in Pennsylvania, because this passed on a party line vote of 14-12. So it's split. Of course, the Republicans voted against it in this instance. I don't know if they're anti-cannabis or they saw this as a anti-capitalist bill too. But that is the way the vote went. So we'll see what happens. I don't know, man. You know, this bill scares the shit out of me, because if they do it this way, I hope other states don't see that and try to do the same thing.
Right. It could set a very dangerous precedent if that's the way that any state actually starts to operate.
Yeah.
Something I do wonder about Pennsylvania in particular, just because of the demographic that lives in Pennsylvania, I wonder if that has anything to do with why they're doing things differently. From what I understand, Pennsylvania has the highest population of Amish
Right, yes.
of anywhere in the country. And I'm wondering if alcohol at least isn't so overregulated to protect, Amish children from going out and acquiring things that their community leaders may not want them to have.
Yeah. Maybe, that's a good point, because they're very conservative in that community. Of course, we all heard of the Rumspringer and all that stuff, but it's a very conservative kind of community, and so that could be the case. You're right. I didn't even think about the amount of Amish that are in that state. And I actually have some listeners from other countries and stuff. If you guys don't know what the Amish are, they're essentially a Germanic kind of people that are here in America that have been around for a long time, and they live a very I wouldn't say a primitive lifestyle, just a very old way of living. No electricity. Now, some of them do, some of them don't. There's different sects of them, but commonly no electricity, no TV. They build everything their own, churn their own butter and stuff. If you're a Weird Al Yankovic fan, you remember Amish in Paradise. That's what he was referencing. And some of you that don't, go look at it. Go look it up. Pretty funny. But Pennsylvania has a lot of Amish people, and that could be a deciding factor on that. And who knows, they could have been one of the ones that don't want this passed, or maybe they were one of the ones that said, hey, just do it like alcohol then, if you're going to do it that way.
Right.
Because I don't know what their influence is in Pennsylvania. I've actually never even been there. Have you been there yourself?
I haven't. No.
Yeah, I've never been there. Don't know if I'd ever want to. I don't really can think of anything on the top of my head that makes me want to go to Pennsylvania.
The only thing I could think of is it would be kind of cool to go tour one of the Amish farms. But other than something like that, I can't think of a single thing I would want to do in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, me neither. I'm just maybe a sporting event?
Right. It doesn't sound like a
Philly cheesesteak. Or cheesecake, sorry.
Cheesesteak.
Cheesesteak? Okay, yeah. He said Philly cheesesteak. I don't eat much cheese, so but yeah. Gino wants a Philly cheesesteak. That's fair.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
Yeah. I guess you're right on that one. But other than that, I don't know. I got a buddy that lives there, and every time I talk to him, I'm just like, man, this doesn't sound like a fun place, bro. This is
right.
At all.
Somehow, even though I know that's where it is, I never associate Philadelphia with Pennsylvania.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either at all. I forget sometimes, and who knows? Maybe people do that with Albuquerque.
Right.
Oh, Breaking Bad. Yeah, that's what you mean. So, but yeah, I just wanted to update everybody on the Pennsylvania thing, or let everybody be aware of what's going on there, because that's just actually really interesting, because no other state has successfully used this model, and out of all the states that have tried or that are going to try, I think Pennsylvania is probably going to be one of the only ones that have a possibility of actually passing this, just for the fact of how quickly it went through the house, or it's going through the House right now. Right. But we'll see once it gets to the Senate side. I don't know, PA's politics, or how their houses are set up and who's in what position. But this right here is just signal of, wow, that went through quick.
I just looked it up just because I wasn't very familiar with the bill. And it looks like as of yesterday, the House approved the bill.
Yeah. So yeah, there we go. It passed the House. Yeah. So now we're going off to the Senate, and if it's gonna mirror reflect what happened in the House, it'll have one committee and then go to the floor. If that's the case, we'll see this going to the governor here very quickly. That's quick. I see if this is going to be on the same schedule it's on right now, it's going to pass and be to the governor's desk before the weekend.
Right.
So this is going to be something that I'll keep watch on ongoing, because the state store thing is interesting. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it, but the best thing we can do is study it.
Well, there's definitely some opposition to it. Like you said, it's mainly the GOP who are opposed to it being passed, both in the manner that they're trying to pass that they find problematic, how they're just trying to ram it through, and the state-run stores is another thing that they're bringing up.
Yeah, I did see one of the representatives made a comment that, she didn't like the fact that, it was pretty much brought at the middle of the night kind of thing and rushed through. And I agree, it was rushed through. And like, it was like over 100 pages long, the bill itself. And so that doesn't give anybody enough time to be familiar with anything, in
Right.
that amount of time. So, I'm with the GOP on that one. It's very rushed.
Yeah.
And the state store thing is very anti-capitalistic, close to more of a communistic kind of style than anything. So, but we'll see. No state has done it so far, but I don't know. I don't know how tough their Senate is.
Right.
Usually the Senates are a lot harder in states than the houses, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But that's all I have for this week and everything, and the updates and all that. Thank you everybody for watching and tuning in this week. Bunch of stuff is happening, especially here in New Mexico, and I'll update you guys more probably on next week. I just can't fit everything in one episode, so and I'm sure more is going to happen in between now and then. So thank you again, Tery, for joining me. Good luck on the video game and the cannabis thing. I think it's cool. As a fellow gamer myself, I hope you succeed, and I hope to see more tournaments throughout the whole state and maybe something catch on from it, man. But before we go, is there anything else you want to tell the people?
No, I just want to say, guys, to the entire cannabis community, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for helping this grow into what it is growing into. I'm loving seeing some of the new stuff come to market, some of the new ideas, some of the new products, and just watching the quality evolve as time goes on. So yeah, like I said, to the entire cannabis community, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for being a part of this growth. Thank you for the support you showed me personally. I appreciate the hell out of it.
Heck yeah, man. And I appreciate your support as well, brother. If ever in the Hobbs area, which, I find myself sometimes, I'll hit you up. Maybe we'll play some games and smoke some doobies.
Sounds good, bro.
All right. And for the rest of you guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, whatever you got to do to stay in the know. I'll see you guys next week. All right. Shoots. Thank you.